Hi, my name's Kirsten Lavery, and I'm the manager of addiction recovery services at Swedish Ballard. And I get to work with a fantastic population. I also know somebody that I get to work with in different advocacy settings. And today I'm going to have the opportunity to hear a little bit more about her story.
Thank you, Kristen. My name is Jennifer Justice. Before anything, I am a mother of four, but I am a parent ally with the First Legal Clinic. And I get the amazing honor of being a parent ally, a parent advocate, a friend, and a mentor to mothers like myself who happen to have been or currently using substances while pregnant.
So, Jennifer, today, as being somebody in recovery, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very, very large family, very much a village. The whole thing, if it takes a village to raise a child, that was my family. My parents had us very, very young, and so weren't always capable of parenting us. And so family members, aunts, uncles, mainly grandparents, stepped in a lot of the times. We were loved more than any children could possibly be loved. But addiction also ran really heavy in my family. And that doesn't have to necessarily mean drugs. It could be gambling, eating, shopping, relationships, bad relationships. And so, kind of the skills that we were taught growing up were those things to become very dependent on people and things to get through really tough situations. I never wanted to have children, but I ended up having children in my early 20s. And when I became a mom, that was it for me. I was mom. I was blessed that the father of my older children, his father owned a business. And so I was very fortunate to be able to stay home and parent my children. And I became super mom. And that's not bragging. I literally dedicated my life to being the mom you saw on TV. I nannied for my sisters and my friends, and just my house 6 days a week was minimum 4 to 5 children under the age of three. And I just loved every minute of it. In 2006, 2007, their father and I separated, and it came very much out of nowhere for me and devastated my life. I attempted to be a single mom. I started looking for work, and I found that very difficult because I was very apprehensive of daycares. And so I ended up bartending. It was something I was good at. It allowed me to be home with my children during the day. And as I became a bartender, these health problems that I had, I have a hip problem, and started becoming an issue. And so I was seeing a doctor and went to a pain clinic and started on opiates as a way to dealing with that so that I could work these long 10-hour shifts. And as time went on, it was easier to leave my children with my parents because picking them up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get up in the morning was just didn't seem very like the right thing to do. And so my children ended up spending more time with my parents. And my doctor ended up deciding that me going to the pain clinic wasn't going to be the best option. And so I did some other things, but ultimately it ended up with me turning to street drugs, opiates, heroin, as a way to cope with my pain. And so you fast forward a couple of years, and I'm in a new relationship with somebody else. And I I thought I was doing the right thing. But this time I was no longer a bartender. I owned my own business. I was very successful. I had a home, very nice cars. My children wanted for absolutely nothing. And I thought all of those things were making me a really good parent still. Um, my parents were having to step up more and more to help me with my children. And I got pregnant with my now 8-year-old. And my family was not aware of my use. Nobody was. I was very, very good at hiding it. I was what you would call a functioning addict completely. But my kids were missing school, and so they started staying with my parents more, and it just became this. I guess maybe people may have thought something was, a little different, but definitely not related to drugs by any means. And so towards the end of my pregnancy, I told my OB, who was the most wonderful doctor. He was my doctor for all of my children, had been since the day they were born, if not right after they were born, delivered one of my children. And I really trusted him. And I had lied to him about almost my entire pregnancy. And so finally, towards the end of my pregnancy, I decided to tell him that I had been using. And you could see just the hurt that I had not been honest and the disappointment because this man, I mean, my mother worked for him in his office. All my siblings and my friends went to his office. He sent birthday cards to my children. Like he was more family than he was even at my doctor. And so he decided, we talked about, options that would help me get into treatment or whatever afterwards. But I don't think at the time I was really interested. I still could not see my own addiction as a problem yet. And so my son was delivered by emergency C-section. That's the beginning of probably the worst period of my life. And I do apologize, you guys, because I do get emotional. They had me on Dilaudid to help manage my withdrawals after my son was born. And my son went through terrible withdrawals for quite a long time. My family stepped up in ways that I'm truly grateful for. They would be there for him day and night in the NICU. So let's see, 3 days after delivering my son, the doctor came in and said, CPS wants to see you, and they're not willing to wait anymore because I had been putting it off. And I could not even sit up myself. I was so heavily on medication, the Dilaudid, and so I had asked the nursing staff, could they please not give me a couple doses so that I could make it to this interview the next day. I had to be wheelchaired in. I was still so out of it. I could barely stay awake the whole entire time, and really not having any support, no legal support, just me and the father of my child. And we're sitting there and we're listening, and they're telling me that they're going to create this plan that's a safe plan that's just going to protect myself and my children. And of course, as a mom, that's all I wanted. And so I agreed to it. I had no idea what I had signed. 2 days later, I found out that I had basically signed my son to the state and that a dependency had been filed. They had had a court hearing even before I got out of the hospital that I had no idea, that I was just marked as not showing up to. But what I remember is leaving the hospital on day 5 without my son because he was still in the NICU on morphine, withdrawing from opiates and meth. And I called my doctor's office to schedule a C-section follow-up. And they tell me that he's discharged me as a patient. And I just remember feeling so betrayed that he called CPS on me in the first place, betrayed that he discharged me as a patient without even talking to me about it. It just added to my problems and my addiction. And so, over the next couple of years, I battled a very, I'm going to back up. So about a week after I leave the hospital, I'm going to have what they call a FTDM, a family team decision-making meeting. And I get there and they said, bring whoever you cares about you and loves you. And I said, great. So my dad, the father of my older 2 children, my friend who is in California, she called in, and the father of my baby called in because he knew that he would not be able to sit there and deal with that in person. So he was going to be by phone. And so during this meeting, they say, if they go around the room and they ask everybody, what should happen with Jennifer's children? And it's still not resonating to me at the time that they're saying children. I still only think this is about my baby. And unanimously, everybody around the room said, she's a wonderful mother. Don't take her children from her. That's where they belong. And in the end, they pretty much had already made that decision that they were going to remove my child. And my dad, bless his soul, said, he stepped up immediately and said, I'll take all 3 boys. Still not hearing what was quite happening. And I remember them saying, okay, well, so, because the older kid's dad was there, and they're like, you're okay with the kids going there? And I remember just stopping for a second. And I was like, what do you mean my older kids? And they were like, well, all 3 children will be removed from your care. And I just remember my heart just falling on the table, and I couldn't breathe. And I remember just hearing all these echoes, and I just couldn't believe that this was happening to me, that they were going to take my reason for being. And so grateful to my father, and I agreed to family voluntary services and random UAs and all of these things. And in the months to follow, things just got worse. So the court hearings are coming. My house was in foreclosure. It was my grandparents' house, the house that I grew up in. I was brought home to at 6 days old, that I had been living in while it was in foreclosure. Finally was sold. So I was losing my home. I lost my business. I lost my cars, all my belongings. And the department and the courts were saying, just get better and you can have your kids back. But I didn't even know how to do that. I mean, I couldn't even fathom how to do that. This new trauma had been introduced and I had to deal with that before I could even think about getting better. And so I did that. I attempted to try to do what they said, and I couldn't. I couldn't because I didn't have cars. I couldn't because my social workers changed. I think I had five in the 2 years that I was involved with the department, and just as many attorneys. And so every time I'm trying to call and get help or reach out, I told, I'm not your caseworker, and nobody knew who it was. And I remember one time ending up in court and telling the judge, like, bringing just this stack of papers I'd printed out of emails and phone calls to the CPS and to attorneys, and saying, who is my attorney? Who is my caseworker? And all of them saying, I don't know. And finally the judge looked at them and said, this mom is trying, and I'm not going to find that she's not doing what she's supposed to. I'm going to tell you guys to step up and do your jobs. Like, she doesn't even, do you guys know who her caseworker is? No, nobody knew. And so I will own my part of this. I was now looking back, was not ready to get clean. But even if I was, I sure didn't have the support. And the way CPS went to my family and basically told them, if you let her be involved, if you let her come stay the night or see her kids and stuff, we're going to take them from you and put them in foster care. So of course this built this, frustration and fear and animosity and all of these things, because when your children are removed and CPS gets involved in your life, it never just affects you. It doesn't just affect your children. It affects the entire family. And after 2 years of that battle, I ended up in termination for the rights of my 8-year-old. My oldest, I signed over my rights to their father in the very beginning. So they were removed from the case, but they remained living with my parents. And I remember, it was a Wednesday. I got a call on a Wednesday from somebody who said they were going to be my termination attorney during my termination trial. And she said, can you meet with me? And obviously I couldn't. I didn't have a car. I had just even barely got a ride to make it to the court date, which was going to be on that Friday. And she said, okay, well, can we meet before? Can we meet before court? And I was like, yeah, okay, that works. I met my attorney for my termination trial 17 minutes before we walked in. And this woman is supposed to represent me and fight for me. And she didn't know me. She knew nothing about me. She didn't know my children. And she basically told me that I should just go in and not fight. Don't fight this. You're not going to win. And I told her, I said, no, I'm going to fight, because in the end, I want, if nothing else, even if I lose my rights, I want my children to know I fought for them till the very, very end. And so we went in, and my mom came and testified against me. My stepmom. It was a very difficult day for me. And I remember at the end, the judge telling me that he was going to take the weekend to make a decision, which I appreciated, because I felt like that meant he really cared about the decision he was going to make. It ended up taking much longer than the weekend. I think it was like a week or so, maybe longer. And he came back with the decision that he could tell that I loved my children more than anything in this world, but love was just not enough. And it would be in my children's best interest for my rights to be relinquished to my now 8-year-old. I think he was like 2.5 at the time, and that my parents would be going for adoption after that. And I just remember everything just kind of stopped for me at that point. I was so sad that there weren't even words. And I did take it. I tried to go to appeals court, and we lost in appeals court as well. And so I just kind of fell further into my depression and further into my addiction. I was homeless. I would see my kids as often as I possibly could get out there, but it was rare. And when I did, I was so ashamed and so angry with myself, and they were angry with me. And although they loved me and always wanted me to be there, and so this went on for years. And then I came to this point where I find myself pregnant again, 5 years later, homeless. By this time, I mean, I had lost everything, even my teeth at this point. And I was just, I'd grown this anger towards my family because I felt like they didn't help me. They didn't support me when I needed them most. And that hurt me. Because my family was so close prior to this. I mean, I remember my youngest children's father saying to me, he's like, "You have a family like you see like Hispanic, big Hispanic families that all live together in one roof, right? Like we were so close, all of us, all my siblings, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, everybody." Um, and during the time that during these 5 years, I lost both my grandparents, who played a huge role in raising me, and I remember the last image of me was in addiction and having lost my children, and I just a disappointment is what I thought. And so that was all of this became, this was going to be my legacy. This is what my children were going to think of me. And I was missing out on so much. And I just didn't feel that love and support from my family that I felt like I deserved and that I should have had. Always grateful that they took care of my children because they didn't have to. And it, upended their lives. But here I am finding myself pregnant and terrified that I'm going to have to tell my children, terrified that, with the way my life was, I was going to lose another child. And one day I just decided that, nope, this was going to be different. I was going to get better. This was it. This was what was going to help me get better. And so I started reaching out to find ways to get off heroin and meth. And I had heard about methadone. I didn't know Suboxone or Subutex was the thing even. And so I ended up at the START clinic in Puyallup and they started me, they told me about Subutex and that we could do this, but I needed to go get, I needed to get detox, and they told me about Swedish Ballard. And so, I went right away. I think I lasted a day the first time. um, and so I left, and I decided that maybe I couldn't do this, and maybe I didn't want to have my son. And so I had scheduled multiple abortions, and I couldn't just go through with it. Something inside of me just would not go through with it. So here now I am 20 something weeks pregnant, have had no prenatal care, still using, still homeless. And I finally told my children and my parents, and I got a response I wasn't expecting. Everybody kind of was just supportive, um, in the back of their minds, knowing and fearing that they would end up having to take care of another one of my children, but supportive nonetheless. And so I think about, let's see, I'm coming to March. Yep, March, beginning of March, and I'm like 30 something weeks. And it's like, I've been to Swedish Ballard a couple of times. They were always willing to take me back, even though I kept leaving. Their door was never closed to me, and they were always so kind to me. And so I go back and I test positive for the coronavirus, not COVID, but the coronavirus. And they're like, "You can't stay, but if she doesn't stay, she can't come back." And so they fought for me to be able to stay, and they got the approval for me to stay, and they were going to quarantine me. And I did it. I didn't stay the entire 26 day, but I stayed for 7 to get stabilized. And the day that I left was the day that Washington State went on lockdown for COVID. And I remember just being really scared that I was going to be stuck in this place. And I'm sure I could come up with a million reasons why I decided to leave, but I didn't. I knew that I was never going to go back and use. And upon leaving the Swedish Ballard inpatient program, I was connected with Gina, or I'm sorry, with First Clinic. I was given the number to First Clinic by my counselor, and she was like, I don't know if they can help, but just reach out. And so, mind you guys, I want to take a step back here. So while I'm doing this, I'm trying to find prenatal care, an OB, so that, I can say that at least I connected with somebody during my pregnancy, because I know that CPS has issue can, it's a reason for removal if you don't have prenatal care. And so I'm in the Auburn area and I'm looking for prenatal care and I can't get it. And I remember telling this story and having people not believe me. And that was so frustrating to me because I was going to clinics. I mean, clinics, not private doctors' offices, all these different clinics, community clinics, and being told that either I was too far along, too active in my addiction, and all of these things. Now, this is prior to, I'm going to pause myself for 1 second. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, you guys. And so I can't find prenatal care. I was given appointments twice and then called and told that they would not be taking me on, giving me a second appointment. And so I ended up in an ER in Auburn, and because I was having some pains and I was scared. And so I remember the ER doctor coming in and I was shaking, and I just broke into tears. I hysterically broke into tears. And I told her, I said, I haven't had any prenatal care. I know you're a mandated reporter. I know you're going to report this, but I can't. I literally can't get prenatal care anywhere. And she said, she sat down, she wrapped her arms around me, and she was like, no, that I'm going to take you on as a client or a patient. That's unacceptable. And I remember her giving me her business card and her information, and I started crying again. And I said, your office is one of the offices that said that I couldn't be a patient. And she said, well, I don't care. You're going to be my patient, and I'm going to make sure you get the care that you and your baby deserve. And I remember it was like the first kindness that was showed to me my entire pregnancy, and compassion. And so she and the Start Clinic are the ones who helped me get into the ARS. And so now jumping back forward again, here I am at ARS getting ready to leave, and I've got the number to the first clinic. And I get back with my baby's dad, and I'm going back to this homeless place where we were, and I'm scared because I know how likely it is that I'm going to relapse because I have made that choice. And so, 1 second, guys, hold on, sorry. Hey, I'm so sorry, you guys. He is having the ultimate meltdown right now. Um, so okay, yeah. So I leave that day, and I am back at this place where I have been living, that I'm homeless, and I decided, I'm just going to make the phone call. And I call the number that was given me for the first clinic, or yeah, first clinic. No, I'd Start Clinic. All these clinics get me confused. And Adam answered the phone pretty much right away too. And I told him a little bit about myself, and he was like, "Yeah, absolutely. We can help. Glad that you called us." And then he said these words that every person who's ever asked for help just dreads hearing. I'm going to give you a phone number to somebody, and her name is Gina, and she's a parent ally, and she's going to help you, and you're just going to do what she says. And all I hear in my head is, oh, here goes the handoff. He doesn't really care. Nothing's going to happen. But I said, okay, I'm going to try. And so I get off the phone with him, and I called Gina Wassermiller, and here comes this really bubbly personality and this just ray of light, right? That's happy. Everything's going to be great. I can help you. And, I've been there. And, she had this real story that, she was a person who came from addiction and hardships, just like me. And so, I was intrigued, but nobody could do what she was saying. And nobody could get me out of my homelessness, and nobody could find this solution to my problems. And then she said, are you willing to come to Snohomish County? I could better support you up here. And I said, no, nope, not willing to go. Not willing to leave my baby's dad, not willing to leave my comfort, not being willing to be that far away from my kids, even though I wasn't seeing my kids very frequently. Nope, nope, nope. And she said, okay, not a big deal. We'll figure it out. Give me a little bit of time here. Give me the day and I'll figure it out. So she hangs up with me. And I remember just sitting there and like looking around and thinking, no. I did this last time. I said no. and I didn't do things, and I wasn't willing to change and get out of my comfort zone. And so I called her back and I said, is that offer still good? Can I come to Snohomish County? And she said, yep, absolutely. She said, give me a couple minutes. I'm gonna call you right back. And so I hung up with her and had this knot in my stomach, and I went and told my baby's dad. I said, I told her I'd go, and he's like, what? What is it? You don't even know what that means. And she calls me back and she says, okay, you have a hotel room, in Snohomish. Just go. It's there for you. And I was like, what? What? And I'm looking up this hotel online, and it's a dream. I mean, the nicest thing I've slept in I can't tell you how long. And so I'm like freaking out. I'm like, okay, I'm going. And I tell my baby's dad, and he's like, I'm not going. And I remember just being devastated by that, right? And then I'm like, we don't have a choice. Like, we have to do something different. If we want a different outcome, we have to do something different. And so he said, eventually he said yes, and we went. And I remember arriving at this place, and we had some complications because we didn't have IDs and stuff. But I remember showing up to this place and being like, this is beautiful. Like, this is a dream. And oh, 1 second, my son's coming in. And so I get there. We have some complications because of my ID, but it all ended up working out. And we're staying at this hotel, and things start progressing really quickly. Literally everything that Gina was saying she was going to do, she did. There was follow through and support. And again, coming from somebody who I could trust, that I could believe, because she came from a similar background to me. She wasn't an opiate addict, or never was, but she was somebody who lived a similar life that I could. So she connected me with the social worker from the Everett Police Department, who ended up getting us a car, like things I could not imagine. She connected me with community support. And this is all during COVID. So like during the hardest time that our country's ever been in, and still she's moving mountains for me, somebody she doesn't even know. At this point, somebody she's still never even met in person. And I just kind of remember being in awe of that, and very grateful. And so about 40 days later, I am coming back from a shopping trip, and something happens, some eruption happens, and I end up having an emergency C-section, which was not scheduled. I was supposed to have, I had a scheduled C-section for the, okay, so I'll back up a little bit. So everything started progressing really quickly once I got to the hotel. We had some complications, like I said, because we didn't have IDs, and, just being homeless for a while. We didn't have the things kind of that the hotel wanted us to have, to be able to stay there. But they ended up working with us in the program that got us there, to allow us to stay. And Gina got me connected with the Everett Police Department social worker, Rochelle, and she actually got us a car. And like these things that I just, for one, I couldn't imagine happening, because these people were strangers. They didn't know me. I think Rochelle was the only person at this time that I had met in person. I still never even met Gina at that time. And she had gotten me connected with all these community supports and people who cared about me and didn't even know me. And that was kind of hard to believe. I won't lie, my babies, I was a little bit skeptical, like, because this is not something that happens, especially to people like us, addicts, recovering addicts. And I just kind of remember the whole time, like, wanting that pinch me feeling, like, is this real? This can't be real. And so we had been at the hotel for about 40 days, and I just got back from getting baby soap to finalize the things that I needed for my son, and the community, and my girlfriend of mine that I grew up with when I was little. I mean, they just really rallied together around us and got us everything that we needed for my son, just everything. And so, and we've got it all set up in the hotel. It's just beautiful. And something abrupted, and I ended up in being rushed by ambulance to Providence Hospital, which was really scary for me because I had a scheduled C-section for the next morning at Auburn with Dr. Wheeler. And so here I am in a city I don't know, far away from everybody that I know and everything I know. going into a hospital with doctors I don't know who don't know me. Not my plan, right? And so my son was delivered by emergency C-section. I was honest with the hospital. I let them know that I'm a recovering addict and that obviously I need some medication for my C-section and stuff, but as soon as possible, I'd like to not be on any pain management other than ibuprofen. And they were happy to oblige, and they were very kind to me. A couple days later, we were transferred from the Women and Children's to the large Providence Hospital, and we were a hospital social worker came. And we had known this. So First Clinic and Adam and Gina had planned this with me, and we had a plan that we know CPS was going to come and what we were going to do and say and all that. And they, we had this really solid plan. And so hospital social worker comes, tells me, yep, CPS is coming in the next couple of days. Still, everybody very kind to me. Sorry, 1 second. Thank you. And thank you guys for being so understanding and during this. So the hospital social worker comes, they're coming to let me know. Still, they're very kind to me, which I was not expecting because it was not my first time dealing with CPS and it was just not my experience last time. And so CPS doesn't come in person, but we do an FTDM over the phone with, and I think there was 17 people. I had a list of 25, but I think 17 people actually joined, including Adam and CPS, to decide what was going to happen with my child. And this FTDM went as bad could go. My stepmom showing up saying, she really didn't believe that I had, that we were both clean, that we, that we could do this, that we might need support. It just as bad as it could go. And so my family's fighting, and my baby's dad gets up and leaves, and I can see it falling to pieces right in front of me. And I've worked so hard at this point. I've remained clean and sober. It was turning into my worst nightmare. And so I get up and I'm running around the hospital a couple days after having a C-section, trying to find my baby's dad. And finally I just said, you know what, stop. Adam helped me gather everybody down, calm them down. And I said, I'll just do whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Ask me to climb Mount Everest. I'm doing it. Here we go. Backpack, baby on my back. Let's go. And so they said, are you willing to do family voluntary services? Yes, do it. Random UAs, done it. Let's go. And then they asked my family, the most, I just think was ridiculous, but they asked if they could do a 20-minute check-in every single day for the next 7 days. And mind you, my family at this point lives a minimum of 55 to 65 miles away. So round trip, they're having to travel 130 miles sometimes to just do a 20-minute check-in with me and report it to CPS for the next week. Luckily, my dad worked in Everett at Boeing, and so he would just come by after work on a couple of the days, and then other family members came. But we did it. My son has never spent a day away from me, my 3-year-old. Not by choice, at least. I did go to vacation a couple of times recently, but otherwise, he's never spent a day away from me. I successfully completed family voluntary services. I worked with Vanessa Thines. She was very kind to me, very understanding, very real, and I appreciated that. I continued to go to the meetings, the First Clinic support meetings for a little bit, and then I stopped going. I went back to college. Gina got me, so 4 months after my son is born, I moved into an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment in Everett, with my son and his father. And Christmases, 20 Christmases bundled up in one. That was the excitement of moving in to our apartment with our new baby. And the next month I went back to college. I went to Green River Community College, and over the next 2 years during COVID, I got my AAA in legal administrative assisting. And during this time, his First Clinic was supplying me with, gas cards when I needed it. They got me Christmas presents for my children. They got me an internship with Alfred and Associates that I did for, I want to say it was almost 6 months or 3 months or something like that. And the women there were just amazing. And I did a second part of my internship at ABC Law, where First Clinic's attorneys Actually, I think they ABC is the attorneys. Um, and I'll never forget, you guys, that there was a day when I was at Alfred and Associates, and they were talking about public defenders, and I made the joke like, "Oh, you mean public pretenders?" Because that was my experience my whole life. When you got a public defender, they were not great and they didn't care, and they were like, "We're public defenders," and I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, so is First Clinic." And I was like, "What?" My mind is just blown at this point. Like, no way. No way. They care. You guys care way too much and try way too hard to be public defenders. But there it was in front of me, people who genuinely cared about their clients and the outcomes of these people, and knew these people, knew their children and birth dates and names and genders, which was not my experience with my previous dependency or anything. And so I graduated, and over the summer, I kept in touch with Gina. Gina has been such a huge support for me, really somebody to look up to. And she was going to go on vacation in August, right after the summit that we had, where I went and presented my story. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I'd love the opportunity to come try to do what she does, to support her, to give back and let her go on vacation and help her out." And I did. I went, jumped headfirst in, having no training or anything. And I did it for this week while she was gone. And I realized this was my place. This was my purpose. All of the bad that had ever happened to me was meant to happen for this moment where I was going to be able to turn my addiction and the removal of my children and my determination of my rights and all of this pain and all of the suffering that I had gone through was going to have purpose, and I was going to make change, and all these huge ideas in my head. And I was going to work for the greatest people in the world, people who really truly supported me. And so they offered me a position, and now here I am, a parent ally, coming up on a year with the First Clinic. And I'm grateful.
And Jennifer, you get to work with our program, and this is how I've met you, advocating for other parents and families as they're going through this process and starting their recovery journey. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like working with the SUPP program and working with other moms, and maybe even a little bit about your experience when you were in the program?
Yeah. So I first want to go back to with my experience at the Swedish Ballard SUP program. I had been to detox prior to being pregnant ever, and had just horrible, horrible experiences. And so that was my mindset. That is what I assumed this was going to be like. And now I come and teach classes there once a week to moms. And I will tell you, I tell everybody, this is like a five-star resort of detoxes and treatment centers. You get your own room, you get meals 3 days a week, and snacks and all these wonderful things, and nurses and stuff that really care about you. Sorry, one more time, you guys. Okay. And so it was really hard for me. So while I was there, like I said, I had been there a few times to the ARS program, and each time I came with different challenges of trying to get stabilized on medication. But I remember having my own bathroom, and just that being this really, really important thing to me during my detox, because I needed it so much. I needed the shower to help me get through my withdrawals. And my counselor, even when I was telling her I wanted to leave and stuff, she was so supportive, and she fought so hard for me to get there. And even though I was on quarantine, they really made sure I could get out and move my legs. I mean, just this support. It's a reoccurring theme in my dream. The supportness, the support and kindness and compassion that was really necessary for me to be able to get my legs underneath me started at ARS with that. When it came to my recovery, I remember the food being really good, like the breakfast. Oh my gosh, I still ask the moms, is the breakfast still really good? um, but I remember the nursing staff, every nurse, no matter what, no matter how much of a pain I was, and I know that I was a pain. I remember one time they had to come in and tell me I had to stop eating all the graham crackers because I literally ate them out of graham crackers like twice. But they were always so nice to me. And I got to this point during my detox where I was really sad and depressed. And I remember Dr. Walsh coming in and sat down on my bed and and I remember the words that he said to me. I'll never forget them because they changed something inside of me that day. He said, you know, he explained to me about my addiction and about my baby and how, yes, I made this choice, but it wasn't going to have this long lasting effect on my baby. That opiates, once they're out of my child system, out of my system, they're just gone. Um, and even the way he spoke to me, it was like he was speaking to me like I was a human being, like my feelings mattered, like he understood um, the fears that were living inside of me and how hard I was being on myself. And he spoke to me in terms that I understood, not, he didn't speak at me. And I appreciated that. And he was so knowledgeable about the medication I was taking, about how it was going to affect my child, and really about the emotional part that it was playing on me. And I just remember it felt like this backpack was taken off my shoulders, just this really, truly um, moment of relief that he provided to me. And um, I say now coming back and teaching at the classes and seeing other moms complete the program, I regret so much not completing the program because the knowledge that these moms receive while they're there, I had no idea that epidurals had fentanyl in them. I learned that from an ERA Swedish Ballard Cups graduate. And I just remember every time I talked to these moms, like the knowledge, the things that they got, and this, I was just like, man, I really, really took away from my own experience because they get this experience and they get this camaraderie of other mothers that are going through it that I just didn't get until now later on, and very, very grateful for it. And so now I come every week and I teach this class there and I talk to moms about my experience and kind of what to expect moving forward. And it's an honor to be able to show up and say, I was in this program. I'm no different than you, but I am what you could be. You could have this. You could have the same, not same life as me, similar life to me. You could even come do what I do. That it is possible.
Yeah, and you
Mhm.
mentioned in your story, I think you highlighted some of the issues with access and just getting access to substance use disorder treatment during pregnancy and some of the fear that exists within the healthcare system with people being able to provide treatment to moms. I, you had mentioned women tend to be less forthcoming about substance use disorder for fear of stigma, and this is even amplified with pregnant and parenting women. Um, what would be your advice to healthcare providers based on the experiences that were supportive and helpful of your recovery? What advice would you give to us or to other healthcare providers?
Well, first and most importantly is that we're people. That we aren't just addicts, right? We did not grow up, as Gina Wasserman always says, we did not grow up playing Barbie dolls, imagining that we were going to be addicts one day and giving birth to children addicted to drugs that are substances. That is not what we thought, right? So we're people, and we're scared, and nobody's going to be harder on us than we are. So when we come in, having that compassion and that respect to not talk at us, to talk to us, but also to be knowledgeable. Because had I walked into somewhere and them not have any resources, which they did a lot of the times, didn't have resources, didn't have options for me, it would have been, it makes it that much more difficult to get help, right? And not only that, but so when you're, not every mom's going to be ready. Not every person is going to be ready to get clean when they're in front of you as a healthcare worker. But if you are kind and you are compassionate, you are respectful, and you offer them all the knowledge that you have and leave that door open, when they are ready, they'll come back. But even when you say, I've had a nurse say something to a patient of mine, a client of mine, that says, don't you care about your baby at all? Don't you know you're just trading one substance for another? She never went back to that hospital, and she ended up delivering in a really bad situation because of it. It is not, that's not fair. If this, what you, one smile, can change. One hug, one kindness can change the outcome for a mom in ways I cannot tell you, and hugely in part by doctors and nurses, because for one, when we walk in, we are trusting that you're going to take care of us and that you're going to be kind to us, and that is not always the case. And even if you're going to have to be a mandated reporter, even if you're going to have to share what that this person has used during their pregnancy, be honest, be transparent, explain that, and explain what they can do about it. Again, knowledge and options make all the difference.
When you mentioned trading one substance for another, what were you referring to? Were you referring to
Yeah.
opiate agonist therapy, medications for opiate use disorder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. And just to clarify, um, opiate agonist therapy has been used in pregnancy since the 70s. It was also recognized as kind of the standard of care by the National Institute of Health since 1998. And yet, this is still something that we see healthcare providers unfamiliar with or fearful of in treating a pregnant population.
Uh,
But also,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
um, oh, that's okay. Abrupt discontinuation of opioids in an opioid dependent person, a pregnant person especially, can lead to things like preterm contractions or fetal distress, even fetal demise. And so we know that this is a supportive and life sustaining treatment, and that this is something that allows people to help resume functioning in their daily lives. And I think it's important that providers in general recognize that this is a frontline therapy um, to assist people with gaining their lives back.
I agree. And I also think that it's really important for them to understand that it isn't a means to an end, right? It does not have to be just get on it while you're pregnant and get off right away. I am 3.5 years into my recovery. I still take 2 milligrams of Subutex. I'm okay with that. I wasn't always. I had a lot of shame around that, and I realized that I'm okay. I'm okay with that. It is what I need to be able to sustain, remain clean and sober. It's not my plan forever, but is my plan for right now, and I'm okay with that. And I think when I share that with moms, it kind of gives them that hope, right? Because everybody thinks like just get on, do what they want me to do, get off, as soon as possible because that will look best, and that's not. You got to take what everybody else thinks out of it. You really have to do what's best for yourself. And if healthcare workers could explain that this is okay, and that it isn't just a replacement. You're not just trading one thing for another. You're doing what's best for yourself, for your child, even after your child's born.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad that you highlighted that. We used to use the term medication assisted therapies. However, that's now becoming old terminology. It implies that medication should have a supplemental or a temporary role in treatment. Uh, we tend we use medications for opiate use disorder or opiate agonist therapy because it aligns with the way that we think of other psychiatric medications, such as antidepressants or antipsychotics. We understand that these are critical tools. They're central to a patient's treatment plan. We would never say to somebody receiving Prozac that they're receiving serotonin assisted therapy. We recognize that SSRIs are the therapy which allows people to resume functioning in their daily lives. This is part of the supportive care that we work with women and pregnant patients as they come into our treatment to help them understand that this is a tool to
Now,
get their lives back.
and I agree with you, Kristen. And I was going to say, it's no different than a patient who has to use something for their, and I can't even think of what it's called now, their diabetes or something. It doesn't have to be looked at in this negative way. And I will say, everybody at Swedish, the ARS Valley, they're just so knowledgeable and so kind and completely transparent. I'm very fortunate to still work with your guys' staff every week. And I can honestly say I've never had a bad interaction with any of the staff or the nurses. And nurses and staff members are just people. So they have bad days, right? And they have biases, but they definitely, I can say, I've never had the experience where I've seen it brought into work with them.
Well, we are so grateful for the time that you take to come in and help support as a parent ally our parents who are stepping into this process, the beginning of this process, and how scary that can be. Hearing from somebody who's that they can put a face with a name, like I know you understand, is that piece is so important. So thanks for continuing to do that work. And Thanks for taking the time to share your story today.
Thank you, Kristen. I have to say, I'm really grateful that I was given the opportunity to come in and do this class, because as helpful it is to moms, it is very, very healing and supportive of my journey still to this day. Being able to turn, like I said, my pain and trauma into something that is supportive and can promote change. I couldn't be a luckier person.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Kristen.